Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, let us discuss about ASP.NET Core Web App integration with Azure Graph API using delegated permissions. In my channel, there is already few videos which are related to ASP.NET Core Web App integration with Azure Graph API, but there we have used application permissions, and in this application, we are going to use delegated user permissions. Delegated user permissions means the application uses the permissions of logged in user. If the logged in user has permission to access Graph API, application uses that permissions to get the user's information. First, we have to set up our application inside the app registrations. So to do that, first we have to go to Azure Active Directory in portal.azure.com. If you don't have an account, you can create one for free. So here I'm searching for Azure Active Directory. Just in case if that icon is not visible to you over here, you can go from here. Now we have to register an app. So here I'm creating an app registration and I'm giving the name as Azure Graph API Delegated App and click on register button. It creates an app registration. And also we have to give the API permissions. So by default, when the app registration is created, it will have the user.read permission, but this allows the application to read the logged in users permissions only. But in our application, we're going to read the information of other users too. So I'm clicking on add permission. Here I'm selecting Microsoft Graph. Now here we are choosing delegated permissions. In other videos we have used application permissions, but here we are using delegated permissions. And search for user.read, and here we have user.read.basic.all. But here there are different other permissions also where we have to get the admin consent. I have demonstrated what admin consent is. You can go to my other videos. I'll keep the links in the description, or even in this video itself I'll show you the links. You can go to those videos and see. But here we are not going to take the admin consent. Instead, we are going to use the delegated user permissions. Click on add permissions. So it adds the user.read basic permission over here. Now let us go to Visual Studio and create our project. Now here in Visual Studio, I'm creating a new project and I'm selecting ASP.NET Core Web App Model View Controller app from my recent project templates. If this is not visible to you over here, you can search from this list. Click on next. Now here I am giving the app name as Azure Graph Delegated Permissions and clicking on next and create. Now we have to add few dependencies which are required for our application. So I'm right clicking on the project and here I'm choosing manage NuGet packages. Go to browse and here we have to search for identity.web. And I'm installing Microsoft.identity.web.dll. Accept. And also we have to use Microsoft.identity.web.microsoft graph. So I'm installing this as well. So here I'm using the latest version instead of preview. I mean, you can use whichever the version that you want. I'm clicking on install, accept. Now we have to do the configuration of Azure's AD settings. So I am giving the name as Azure AD. You might have seen all this information in my other videos, but if any new visitor comes to my channel, this information will be helpful to them. So that's the reason I am reiterating the Azure authentication in this video. But here we are not going in detail into the Azure authentication. If you want more information, you can go to one of the videos in my YouTube channel where I have clearly explained how to implement Azure authentication. Here we have to give few fields. So instance should be https login.microsoftonline.com. So this is the URL where our app will be authenticated, and the tenant ID is related to our Active Directory in the Azure portal. So you can go to the app registration overview. Here you can find the tenant ID. Just copy this and paste it over here. And after that, we have to view a client ID. So client ID, you can go back to Azure portal, and here we have the client ID. And also we have to use a client secret. In our application, we don't have any client secret. So now we are going to generate it. Go to certificates and secrets, and here we have new client secret. Click on here and give the name as Azure Graph API Delegated App Secret, something like this, so that we can easily understand to which application this secret belongs to. Click on add, take this value and go back to the solution and configure it over here. And also, as we are using Azure AD, we have to give the callback URL. So once the authentication is done, Azure redirects the request to this particular URL, and here I am giving /signin OIDC. OIDC stands for OpenID Connect, and save it. Now we have to write some code inside the startup.cs class. So here we are. Before that, let me add few namespaces, microsoft.identity.web, and also use microsoft.graph. And here let us write the code that is services dot add Microsoft web app authentication, as we are using web app Microsoft Identity web app authentication over here. It expects a parameter that is configuration, and here in app settings we have declared the Azure configuration as Azure AD only, and this has a default parameter for the config section name Azure AD. So as we gave the same name, it will refer to that. If you have a different name, you can give a different name, and you have to pass that name over here. But you can ignore this, it won't hurt to give the default name. And after that, we have to give enable tokenization call to downstream API. So this is required because after logging in, our application has to cache the token. So we are enabling the token acquisition, and also we are giving in-memory token caches. And here we, if you see the overload here, we can give the initial scores. So as we have given user dot read dot all permission over here inside the API permissions, so we can give this over here. So when our application runs, it uses this configurations to ask the consent of the user. So I'm giving user dot read basic dot all, and also I'm giving user dot read, and we have to pass this initial scopes, and this is mandatory, otherwise you will run into the exception stating your application did not take the consent of the user. So you have to give this thing, and for this demo I'm hard coding this, but in your application you can configure these settings inside app settings.json, and you can read the values from app setting and refer over here. And here I'm writing add Microsoft Graph. So this will add all the dependencies for calling the Microsoft Graph API and also using the Microsoft authentication. And now we have to write services dot add MVC, and we have to tell the application that we need an authenticated user, and for that we have to declare a policy. Policy is equal to new authorization policy builder, press control dot and use this suggestion. And now we are telling we need an authenticated user and build. Now, if you look this code, this may look complicated, but if you understand in each individual steps, it will be very easier for you to remember all those things. That's how I remembered all this code. And here we have to add it to the options filters dot add, and here we are using authorize filter, and again control dot. From the suggestions I'm choosing this, and we can pass the policy that we have created. Now we have to tell the application that we want to use authentication. So we are mentioning use authentication middleware over here. So this is the configuration related to the startup.cs class. Now we have to do a configuration related to the login and logout. But in this application, I am not showing you the logout. You can refer to my Azure AD video for logout. Here we need login as we are using the signed in user permissions. Now I'm clicking on add platform over here, and we are developing the application for web platform. And after that, go to properties, launch settings.json, copy this port, and our application runs in on localhost. If you deploy this app to Azure App Service, you can add one more platform over here. So for this demo, as we are using localhost, I'm giving this, and here I'm writing sign in OIDC. So once our application logs in, it redirects to the Azure login page, and after that, it once the authentication is done, it redirects back to this endpoint. And also we have to enable ID tokens over here. Click on configure. Now this is done. Now let us go to the controller, and here in home controller, so to create the graph client, we have to follow certain conditions, like we have to get a token and pass that as an assertion to the graph API. So we can do that. First we have to get the token. So to get the token, we can use private read-only token acquisition, and we have to use this class. We can use this class to read the token. This is required to create the graph client object. And I am adding this as a dependency. Now go to the controller, and here first we have to get the token. And here we have to choose get token for user async. So here we are getting the token for the user and it expects the scope. You can copy this and paste it over there. But as I said, you can do this from the configuration page also. And after that, here we have to declare the graph client. Now I am creating the graph service client. Press control dot and use this using graph client is equal to new graph service client. Here, as this is an asynchronous method, we have to give result. And here we are going to use the delegated authentication provider. So here, if you see, we have different overloads. So we are going to use this overload. So the base URL would be the URL to call Microsoft Graph. Again, I am hard coding this. This is not a good practice, but you can configure this in app settings.json. So it should be graph.microsoft.com/v1.4. And here we can give new delegate authentication provider. And if you see, it expects a delegate. So I can give request, and also it expects a task. So as we are not doing any asynchronous operation over here, we can give task dot completed task. Now we have to add the token that we got on behalf of user. Here the application is getting the login token of the user, and we have to use the token as an authorization to use or to connect to the Graph API. So here the application is using the permissions that the user have to call the Graph API. And here new authentication header value, and here we have to pass the header as a bearer token, bearer, and here we are giving the token. So this creates the graph service client. Now let us access the users. And here I am using graph client dot users dot request dot select, and here I am interested to select the user's display name only. But if you want, you can read all this information, but it may need a few other permissions like user.read, read basic.all. So in this demo, I am just reading display name only and get async dot result. This will give all the users inside my Active Directory. Now let me put a breakpoint over here and run the application. So now it is asking for the login. I'm using one of the users in my Active Directory for logging in, and I am giving the password. Now, if you see here, it is asking for the consent of the user because user have to give consent to the application to use all these permissions on behalf of him. So here, if you see sign you in and read user profile. This is because we gave this permission user.read, and here read all users basic profiles. This is showing because we gave user.read basic.all, and also some other permission also it is requesting. So just give the consent, and now it came over here and it got the token, and it uses this token to call Graph API using delegated authentication provider. And now we got the list of users. I think in my Active Directory there are 4 users. So we got 4 users information. So let me expand the first user, and we have read only the display name. So if you go over here, we got the display name. Like this, you can read mail IDs and meetings, calendar information, whatever you want. That is all about the delegated permissions of Graph API. If you like my video, please give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content. Your simple like to this video will be a big encouragement to me to make more videos. Thanks a lot.